So, in Minecraft, a single piston can push or pull up to 12 blocks at a time. You see 12 blocks. It can't, however, push and pull 13 blocks. This doesn't work. So we refer to pistons as having a push limit of 12. But if you think about it, 12 is kind of a lot of blocks. These are quite long lines. What if we lowered the push limit? Well, with carpet mod we can. We can do carpet, push limit, 3. So now we can pull and push 3 blocks perfectly fine, but if we try and do 4, it's not going to work. So what can we do if each piston can only push and pull up to 3 blocks at a time? Can we make a flying machine with this? So, turns out we can. This is a fairly simple flying machine. You might even know this already. And if we update this observer here, it'll go flying off into the distance. Each piston only has 3 blocks. But what if we don't want to use observers either? What do we have available to us then? Well, you might be familiar with this little thing. I'll be calling this a Pseudo extension. Because if you update this, it does, or a Pseudo engine. If you update this, it does move like it's an engine. But you have to update it for every single block. You could, like, stand on here, get a button, and place it like this, but it's not travelling on its own. We'd like something that can fly off on its own into the horizon like that. So we would need something to update this piston automatically. And if we had a push limit of 4, then this would be perfectly fine. We can add this piston in front, this updates it, we're all perfectly fine. But when we lower the push limit to 3, this doesn't work anymore. This piston's trying to push 4 blocks, that's not going to work. So we can't add any blocks in front of this pseudo engine, so we can't do this setup. So what can we do with a push limit of 3? Well, we can still push forwards like this. We can have a forwards extension, this piston only pushing 2 blocks perfectly fine. We can't chain these, however. If we had a push limit of 4, this works perfectly fine. These blocks move forwards. But with 3, if we try this, it's not going to work. This piston trying to push 4 blocks. And we could try and remove this glass block, but wherever we put the piston, it's going to get powered by that redstone block, which means it can't, and you can't push a powered piston, so that's not going to work. Okay, but what we could do is we could have this little forwards extension. Remember, it's only 2 blocks, so we can add this glass, and then we can have one of these pseudo engines that we talked about on the side here. And this lets us go sideways and a little bit backwards. And this does move. But, as we talked about, we can't add any blocks onto the front of this. This can't push any blocks. But what it can do is it can move some redstone blocks around, which might be useful. So let's focus on what these pseudo engines can do if we put them to good use. First of all, we can chain them backwards. When this piston moves, it will update this sticky piston, and they'll both move together. And we can even do that sideways. We can do it on both sides at once. So, alright, we can go backwards and sideways. As I say, we aren't really moving any blocks here. We're not able to, like, push anything here, but we're moving around redstone blocks, which might prove useful. Let's talk about what these can't do, however, because there are some pitfalls here. You might think that they'd be able to chain like this, and the reason being is that this does work on higher push limits. This doesn't work on push limit 3, however, because when this redstone block and slime block are here, they stick together, causing this piston to try and push 4 blocks, which it can't do. So if we try and update this, it just completely breaks into a bunch of pieces. You might think we could put 2 of these pseudo engines next to each other and have them update each other using honey. And if we update this, we see it just gets stuck here. The reason being is these 2 pistons updating each other means they zero tick. Them zero ticking means they can't pull this piston back in, and in addition, this piston doesn't even push back, because the slime and honey arrive before the redstone block, so they never get updated to the fact that they're powered. You might also be wondering if we can go downwards. We can't, unfortunately. This is the only spot where you could put the sticky piston below a block of the pseudo engine, and it just clearly doesn't work. And you can't go upwards like this either. This redstone block here powers this sticky piston, which causes this piston to zero tick, which means the sticky piston also zero ticks, so it spits out its block rather than having a normal extension having time to pull it back in. And you might think if we start with it pulling in, maybe that's more promising, and it does look a bit more promising, but this ultimately breaks anyway, so we can't go upwards like this. And we can't go sideways in these frankly, very silly ways either. But what we can do, as we showed, is we can go backwards, and we can go a little bit sideways. Okay, so what now? Well, if we really want to get ourselves some forwards movement, you might be thinking about the caterpillar. We couldn't get forwards movement with the pseudo engine because it has too many blocks. This only has 2 blocks, it's the fewest you could have. And this one, indeed, it can push some extra blocks. But we have to power it externally. We have to get redstone blocks in this configuration. Can we do that? Yes, we can. If we have 2 of these pseudo engines backwards like this, sideways and going backwards, then they will successfully move this caterpillar forwards. However, this caterpillar can't push any blocks. It has the push limit too, sure, but this block is just jammed in the way. This piston can't push, and even if it could, it would slide it back and it would all compress, and it just doesn't work like this. We do have the caterpillar, but it's not pushing any blocks. But what it can do is it can update another pseudo engine. And now we can go upwards. This is some progress. And we can go a little less upwards and sideways like this as well. So we have these 2 options here. Okay, so what can we do with these? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. First of all, let's say we really do want the caterpillar to work. We really do want to move some blocks forwards. So, if we were able to get a configuration of pseudo engines like this, then that would let us move blocks forwards. If this one moves, it retracts that piston, this one automatically extends, and then we can trigger this one, and then it's reset. And we can do this over and over again. Trigger this one, trigger this one, trigger this one, trigger this one. Okay, so this is a way we could get some real forwards movement. We just have to configure these pseudo engines like this. Can we get them in that configuration? Yes, we can. I'm not going to go over exactly how this works block by block. This is where it's going to start to get a bit more vague. But by using these caterpillars from before, 1 going upwards and 2 going sideways like this, we can allow these pseudo engines to get offset from each other in such a way that they create this configuration, and we can push blocks forwards like this. Okay, so we have some amount of movement. But this is only 2 blocks forwards. We're at the very back right now. In order to get this to move on its own, we would have to update this piston, so we need to move a lot more forwards. How can we do that? Well, as we talked about, we can't chain forwards movement like this. We can chain movement like this, but it's not really going forwards. But if you're paying attention, this redstone block configuration might look suspicious. We can put a caterpillar in here. And now this moves forwards. So we can chain forwards movement like this. We can put these right after each other, and we can chain forwards movement. So we can go as far forwards as we like. And we can use a slightly different configuration. If we instead have the pseudo engine on the side of the redstone block here, instead of having that glass block, then it still works. This is a little funky. You'll notice if I trigger it, this piston isn't extended. It's because this piston being extended prevented this from re-extending, so it got stuck in this state. But it still works perfectly fine like this, and in fact it's even required to do that. You have to in fact build these like this. And why would you be building them like that? So you can get a caterpillar in. If you use the other setup, it won't work, but in this, it will. We can get a caterpillar in this one as well, and we can chain this one too. So, okay, we have 2 different ways of chaining movement forwards. That's good. Now, you might wonder if we can get rid of this glass block here, just shrink this piston right up against it, and it looks like it might work. But this redstone block shifts forwards and powers the piston. Nothing can move, everything's stuck. And exact same thing happens for the other setup. So we can't remove that glass block, but we want to go further forwards anyway, and we found a way that we can chain movement forwards. So, now let's apply this. In this flying machine down here, or sorry, it's not a flying machine yet, but in this setup down here, I have built the exact same thing as before. We get our starter forwards movement from the same thing as before, but now we use this little funky vertical one to start it off, and then we chain it forwards with the other one, and now we're quite significantly forwards. And those glass blocks move forwards. Now, you might notice these glass blocks are a lot higher than this piston. We need to update this piston if we want to make an engine, as I talked about. So we would need some way to go downwards, and I haven't talked about that yet, and the reason is because going downwards is really difficult. It was the last thing I figured out. So, how do you go downwards? Well, let's recap how you go forwards at all, or how you extend movement at all. We have this setup right here, where we have this pseudo engine triggered by this little forwards extension, which can trigger a caterpillar. So, what about this pseudo extension? How else could we update it? We could maybe put it below. And the reason we want to do that, in order to get the caterpillar, we want to move downwards. We need to get the caterpillar lower, but all the redstone blocks are far too high. If we could get a redstone block down here, maybe, that would be a lot more helpful. And we can put this pseudo engine right down here. This glass block updates it. And funnily enough, this redstone block can be shared between these 3 pistons. Very efficient. And so we even have an extra push limit on here. And turns out that's going to be useful because this redstone block on its own can't feed a caterpillar down here. It can only do this. We need something else to handle this piston. And we're going to do that by weirdly going upwards. By adding this piston on top and this configuration of slime and redstone, it will bud power this sticky piston, which allows us to chain movement downwards like this. When we do this, it moves. And we can chain these together to go further downwards. And it's a good thing we can, because we have quite a distance to go downwards. That's quite the vertical gap, and we're only going 1 block at a time. So we chain a bunch of them. And now if we trigger this, we'll see the movement propagates all the way down here, and this final pseudo engine down here has moved. Now, this is a bit lower than the start over here, and the reason is because we need to connect them up now, and we need the spacing of that to be exactly correct. You can imagine, like, if the engine ends up, like, over here, then that's no good to us, or the pseudo engine ends up over here, that's no good to us, it's not connecting. So we need to get the spacing exactly how we need it. And there's no leeway in any of these extensions, you might have noticed. We can't make them shorter or longer. All we can do is use a different extension. And there's only one extension that's flat. There are 2 extensions that are flat, but they don't get us much in the way of wiggle room. Most extensions are vertical, so we go a little lower than we need to, so we have room to adjust the spacing using the more vertical extensions. And so if we do that, we come out of here, we chain backwards like this, we have a caterpillar which goes straight up like this. This gets us our perfect spacing. We chain it all the way over here, and then we have this gap here, because remember, we're going to update this. It's going to slide forwards, and then it will bridge the contact between the 2 and continue the cycle. So, what happens if we update this? This is a push limit 3 flying machine. And I'll just show you. Carpet push limit. We're at push limit 3. And absolutely no observers in the entire thing, only redstone blocks as our power source. And this thing will just keep moving forward, so I can up the tick rate. And we can see it's just slowly inching forwards. You can probably speed this up somewhat if you get some extra pulses in it. You can do some cheeky things to have it cycle multiple times at once. I'm not going to bother doing that. I think for now, this is where I'm going to leave it. This is the current extent of Observerless Push Limit 3 Slimestone, as discovered by me in about one morning. I just spent a couple hours on it and found all of this. This engine is definitely not optimal. I encourage anybody watching this to please go improve it. I'd love to see an engine that's smaller, faster, maybe ones that don't use this horrible downwards extension and can get away with being less tall. But for now, this is where I'm going to leave it. I didn't know about all of this extension tech when I was making the engine. I was making it up as I was designing this, so I'm perfectly aware that some of the things I've already said in this video might give you what you need in order to improve this. So I find this tech really interesting, and I do hope some of you watching do take a look at it. The fact that a backwards extension like this is really easy, but going forwards is comparatively difficult, and going downwards is absolute hell on earth. It's really unique, and the way you chain it together with all of these independent segments, and it's more about block updates than actual movement. I find it really interesting, and I hope you do too. So here I present you a Push Limit 3 flying machine with no observers. I will be leaving a schematic to this and the entire demonstration strip here in the description. I hope you enjoyed.